Hey everybody, how's it going out there? Welcome to Movies and Music with AJ. My name's AJ. Thanks for watching. And we're back today with another album reaction. We're going to be listening to Los Lobos and their album Kiko, which was released 30 years ago this month in May of 1992. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I'm a little embarrassed that I've never listened to Los Lobos before. Actually, let me rephrase that. I'm a little embarrassed that if you played me their music, I wouldn't necessarily know that it was Los Lobos. And the reason I say that is because where I grew up in the 90s in California in a Chicano neighborhood, I'm like positive 100% that this music was playing all around me. And I just never really picked up on it. Because like I said, growing up in the 90s in California, me and my friends, we were all listening to hip hop, West Coast gangster rap. We're listening to Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Tupac. And then, we got a little older, we got into skateboard culture, and that introduced us to skate punk and to nu metal and to alternative metal. And so, so on and so forth. But in terms of music that comes from, the Chicano experience, the Latino experience, that music, it was always around and it was just kind of in the background. But like I said, for us kids, it was, we kind of looked at it as like our parents' music or, that's the older neighbor's music. But for me and my friends, no, we're all about hip hop. And it's kind of unfortunate because, as I get older and I look back on it, there was a lot of great music playing in my neighborhood. And, just because I didn't have that curiosity about it, I'm sure there's all this music that's so great that I just, I don't know the name of it. The only real big exception is going to be like Selena, because she was huge, she was major, she was undeniable. Selena was the one artist that, if you're in the car on a family trip, she's the one artist that everybody in the car could agree on. So to this day, if you play me, Como La Flor or, La Carcacha or El Chico del Apartamento 512, like that stuff just takes me back, and I still, love that music. But like I said, there's a lot of other music that was playing in the neighborhood, and I, don't know what the name of it is. So it could be the case that I've actually, I started listening to this album, and I'm like, oh, okay, I recognize that song, or maybe not, that's what we're going to find out. But yeah, Los Lobos, let's talk about them. And this is what I know about Los Lobos. I know that they're from East LA. I know that they've been going strong, putting out albums since the 70s. I went with Kiko, which I believe is their 6th album. I went with this one because the Wikipedia page said that it's their highest selling album, and it's definitely one of their most popular and, just best reviewed albums. Seems like from what I read that it was kind of a turning point for them. It was like a real artistic achievement. So that all spoke to me. So I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's start there. So yeah, I'm really excited to get into this. So let's go ahead and do that. Without further ado, this is going to be my reaction to Los Lobos with their 1992 album, Kiko. Let's go. Nice beat there. Okay, here comes the guitar. It's interesting, this rhythm, it's like definitely a little funky, definitely a little groovy, but it's kind of like, it had like a tentativeness to it. Oh, nice. I like that. A little bit of psychedelic guitar action there. Is that a flute? What instrument was that? I do like that Los Lobos are a big band, so you're going to get a lot of interesting instrumentation going on. Yeah, I like these little transitions in between the verses. So far it's the guitar work that's standing out to me. Sock it to me one time. That feels very 90s. Here we go. Oh no! Dude's got a good voice. You can hear the passion. It's like very like sleepy Sunday afternoon. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, this is just very like chill, very like, it's like, this would be good cruising music for sure. I could see that. I like that beat. It's a little bit heavier.
Please try to walk, oh sacred night.
Wake Up Dolores. Is this about Dolores Huerta? Yeah, I like those backing vocals. The way they're singing those harmonies, I almost thought it was a keyboard. Nice. I'm a sucker for some brass, especially incorporated into rock music, because it just doesn't happen that often. Yeah, I'm really liking the energy of this song.
Oh, sacred night. Oh, get so good.
Yeah, I like this chorus. Yeah, I gotta look up the personnel, give shout outs, because so far this guitar is really standing out for me. David Hidalgo. Angels with Dirty Faces. It's a strong track title. This beat is so interesting. Like, it feels electronic, even though I don't think it is. It's very hypnotic. The guitar in the right channel. Nice. Okay, I gotta look up the brass and the woodwinds. Who's doing this? Steve Berlin with tenor, baritone, soprano, flute. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard that flute. Was it on track 1? Yeah, what's surprising me so far about this album is just like kind of how mellow and casual it is. Just like good vibing out music, good cruising music, you know? Yeah, this is like so much more psychedelic than I expected it to be. Like, that beat is just so holding it down that it makes room for the woodwinds or the brass to come in with just some flavor and the guitar to just do its thing. Okay. It's a little more on the rockabilly side.
Looking out my window, I see my world has changed. The sun won't rise this morning, 'cause my baby's gone away.
This is so throwback. Even for like the 90s, this would have been throwback.
She used to go out with the girls every now and then. She always came home early.
I'm like over here like doing the twist.
She tells me that she loved me, she would forevermore, but that train don't stop anymore.
Is this a cover? It feels like it's a cover, but it might just be that, you know, that these guys are students of like rock and roll history, and they just really appreciate making, you know, music that kind of calls back to certain eras. They say knock yourself out, baby. Is that what he said? Oh yeah, okay, so there's definitely some like guitar call and response happening in both channels. Or is what I think is guitar in the left channel actually organ and keyboard? So hard to tell. It sounds amazing either way. Aw, shucks. I thought the song was gonna end there. Kiko and the Lavender Moon. I like that title. It's evocative. Okay. See, now this is a vibe. I dig this vibe right here. This reminds me of like watching a classic film. That's what's been missing. The accordion. I just need like a.
Kiko and the Lavender Moon not playing makes believe nobody can see. And then he waits, and then he fades, and then he bends, and then he shakes.
Okay, this track is fire. Alright, this is already my favorite song on the album.
He plays and plays, still playing till he goes off to sleep.
Yeah, that part, I love that. That's like, it reminds me, just like I said, of old classic films. It's kind of noirish. Yeah, a lot of these songs so far, you know, you can see a whole range of influences. But this one feels like the first one that's really a fusion. It's really melding totally opposite types of influences into something new and something beautiful. Like his vocal delivery feels very bluesy, very like a little bit like that rockabilly style that he's been doing, but obviously mixing it with like the accordion and like the cumbia rhythm. It's like all the Latin influence in there mixed with the like Americana influence. And on top of it, the vibe is just like, it's kind of like dive bar kind of aesthetic. It's like smoky, dark room, neon noir, you know what I mean?
He dreams and dreams, Kiko and the Lavender Moon.
He dreams and dreams, Kiko and the Lavender Moon. I will say, just trying to take all this in, this being just totally new music to me, is like, I haven't been paying as close attention to the lyrics as I normally would like to. Okay, now as we're getting towards the middle of the album, I'm hearing a lot more of what I would consider like traditional Latin influences. Yeah, this almost has like a kind of mariachi vibe with all the guitar. Like I just want to hear a grito right now, like, "Areja!" You know? Oh, I love the progression. Yeah. Yeah, this is gorgeous instrumentation right here. Yeah.
Curtains blowing around, curtains blowing around. Stay behind the glass, these curtains blowing around.
You know, they keep referring to this saint behind the glass. Curtains blowing around. He smells coffee in the air. It definitely feels like there's a religious connotation. I mean, obviously the word saint, but I'm wondering if it's like from the perspective of like an altar in a house and like just the smell of coffee and somebody holding a baby in their arms. Just kind of like life happening all around. Like what's behind glass? Like maybe a frame, like a picture in a frame? I don't know. That one did have the kind of like, even though it felt like a positive, uplifting song, something in the vocal delivery was kind of bittersweet. Oh. Yeah. I feel like I heard like 3 or 4 different music genres in a span of 20 seconds just now.
Could have been the fancy words.
Like that opening riff was heavy. Felt metal, you know?
The dogs were barking late last night. There's something going on.
The dogs were barking late last night. Something's going wrong.
Maybe she hoped to just go away and wake up alone in bed.
Maybe it seems like a relationship's having issues. Might even be like a domestic abuse situation.
Could only hear the sound of the breaking of her heart.
Yeah, interesting. Definitely like a relationship that's having issues. Yeah, you definitely would only knock down somebody's door if it was an emergency, right? That guitar riff, or is it brass? Again, the stuff they do with instruments is so experimental and creative that I have trouble distinguishing what's what sometimes. But that riff, it almost had like an emergency kind of siren sound to it, which would go with the theme of like we have to break down Reva's door. Something's going on. When the Circus Comes is track 8.
Could have had a chance to get out of this wreck.
Loving this percussion and that melody.
Could have had a chance.
Man, Los Lobos really know how to just like lock into a groove and just like put you in a trance-like state, you know? Like this being their 6th album, clearly this is a band in control of their sound and style. Like they've just mastered it at this point.
The day I learned this whole place down, when the circus comes to town. Scratch mine out right in front of me. Didn't mean that much.
That's kind of cold though. Scratching someone's name off a tree right in front of them. Yeah, I'm guessing this song is from the perspective of somebody who's either in like a small town or just in a situation where they're just like, they don't want to be, they want to get out of there. That whole running off to join the circus motif, you know?
Chase your heart right out of me. Doesn't mean that much. Doesn't mean that much.
Or, I guess, this is also a person who clearly dealing with some heartbreak, trying to get over somebody. Arizona Skies. That sounds like a weatherman's name. You know, like weathermen always have like these crazy names. Like, isn't there like literally somebody named Dallas Raines? Arizona Skies, reporting for KTLA Channel 5. Yeah, just the experimental nature of this album. Like that underlying beat sounds like processed or electronic, like trip hop or electronica, like that beat, the way it sounds processed. But then there's very traditional guitar playing over it. I feel like you could also build a pretty dope hip hop song around that beat too, couldn't you? Yeah, you could probably drop a freestyle over this track. I'm not gonna try, but it could be done. Not a whole lot to say about this, just other than sit back and take it in, you know? Yeah, this album is just good vibes all around so far, you know? Like, even though some of these songs are about heartbreak and about, you know, bad situations, overall the energy of this is very just positive, you know? It's like feel-good music. I'm liking this riff. Yeah, this is another one of those songs that's like has an upbeat vibe to it, but also like a bittersweet quality to it.
And here I am on the short side of nothing. Here I am on the short.
This song would make a good like montage song in a movie, like towards the end near the climax, where like the main character is like rising up from defeat and getting themselves together, and like it's all coming together for him, you know? Like it has like it's not quite victorious, but it's like on the path to victory, you know what I mean? Like that's the vibe I'm getting from this song. It's like we're turning it around.
No escape inside. Sirens scream and lovers moan, just like any other night. And here I am on the short side of nothing, all alone.
Yeah, this song just moves. Very nice. Okay. I'm gonna say this is my second favorite song after Kiko and the Lavender Moon.
Two James running along the tracks, saying we don't want to live this way, ain't never coming back.
Yeah, this is like a very classic lyrical theme, especially in like roots rock and Americana. That whole running away from home, never coming back.
Too many nights hiding under bed, too many fears to fill the pretty head.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Everybody knows they must have been insane. So goes the tale of two James.
The lyrics in this song are so good.
Must have been insane. So goes the tale of two James.
Yeah, they're doing an interesting thing where on this whole album where it's just like Americana influence, but they just put like a little psychedelic twist on it.
Too many angels with brand new silken wings. Too many cries for love, but no one hears a thing. So goes the tale of two James.
Like, I don't know how interesting this reaction is going to be because a lot of it is just me just like locked into a trance and just like really vibing out. I don't know if that's interesting to watch, but I hope so because that's just where I'm at right now. Wicked Rain.
Down, 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 pouring down upon the night. Well, there's just
Dun, 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 dun. It has a little bit of that little Zeppelin riff in it.
rain, rain, rain.
Dun.
The evil rain falling all the time. Sun, sun, sun. Sun don't
That's what we
ever
need more of.
want to shine. Like travelers in the darkness.
This bass line is just reminding me of that, you know, that Led Zeppelin riff, but it also reminds me of a Michael Jackson song. I'm thinking maybe, is it Bad? Maybe that song. Yeah, that percussion. More of that psychedelic guitar.
Rain, rain, rain. Rain, rain,
Nice.
rain.
Is that sounds like some percussion being played in such a way that it sounds like rain falling. That's pretty cool. We're just going straight country on this one, huh? I do like me some whiskey. I actually like to, one of my go-to cocktails is some bourbon mixed with some Topo Chico and a nice fat ice cube. Tasty. And there's a fusion of cultures, a melding of influences. That old whiskey trail. I don't know, I think that whiskey trail is just like that point of the night where you've had one too many and you're just kind of nodding off. It's just a little bit of drool coming down your lip. That's the whiskey trail. I want to know where a group of dudes from East LA learned to get into country. That's interesting to me. That's a story I want to know. Granted, you know, Bakersfield, California is like 2 hours north, and it's a hotbed of country music. You know, the Bakersfield Sound, Buck Owens, you know, Merle Haggard. So there's definitely some country music pedigree in California. I just wouldn't have expected it coming out of East LA, you know? I bet people light up a dance floor though, going to a Los Lobos show. Like that song, whew. People cut a rug to that song live, I bet.
Just a man made of blood and bone, thrown away all that was once my own. Old and worn and tired too, of cold, so cold, and blue, so blue.
Yeah, this one's just transfixing. I'm liking a lot of the lyrics in this album. Like, just a lot of good classic storytelling. Stories of heartbreak, stories of being in a bad situation, stories of running away, escape.
Never had my fear. Broken hearts would just
Who can't relate to a broken heart? You know, we've all been there.
take whatever's yours.
Oh, I like that.
and get as far away as you can.
I'm really liking the organ underneath this too. But yeah, that solo. Ding, 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 ding.
So much to wait, so much to break, too much at stake.
Nice. That was a pretty solid one. Peace. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm liking this riff. There's just so many like just grimy, dirty riffs on this album. I mean that as a compliment. I mean like just this like roots rock kind of like, it's kind of a country vibe, but with just a little more grit to it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's like outlaw country type of vibe, you know?
Said the time is now to bring peace to the world. Say yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
These lyrics are timely with what's going on in the world right now.
Someday that wall will crumble, tumble and fall. The sun will shine, bring peace to us all.
I like that. It's like, yeah, all the things that we're gonna build as humans, as men, the things that we build that are weapons or defensive structures, just all the things, the barriers that we physically build to keep ourselves separated from each other, all that stuff's gonna go away. Nature's gonna outlast us all, you know? Rio de Tanampa. That's big.
Háblame, río de Tenampa, cántame canciones de valor. En este rincón del cielo dejo mi cariño, mi amor.
Man, this instrumental section here, it like has that traditional mariachi vibe, but also just that little bit of psychedelic twist that they put on everything. It also has like a big triumphant, like Beatles doing All You Need Is Love kind of vibe to it. It's like the big celebratory ending. Alright, but it's gonna keep going. Yeah, some of that horn playing just sounds like a little drunk, a little sloppy, but intentionally so, you know? It's like that's what they're going for. Oh yeah, that was a fun ending. That's a good way to end the album. It actually kind of made me realize that I wish there was more, you know, Spanish lyrics in this, that they would have had a little bit more of that, you know? So I will say, this did answer my question. There was no track on here that was immediately recognizable to me, like from my childhood, where I'm like, oh, okay, I do know that song. No, that didn't happen. But anyway, I will say, you know, it's an interesting album. It's so many influences. It's hard to even say, like, you know, it's that old meme, you know, it's like, hey, Los Lobos, you know, how many genres do you want on this album? Yes. It's such an interesting blend. It's like really like a cultural tour of Americana and like roots music, because you had the country, you had some rockabilly, you had, you know, the more traditional like norteña music. You just so many blends. I was saying this during one of the songs. I was like, the interesting thing to me is I want to know where a group of dudes from East LA learned about country music and about rockabilly, and like how did they get into that, you know? Because like where I grew up in California, you know, that wasn't really around, you know? Like I feel like you had to go digging to look to really find a lot of this music to have it be your influences. You know, Bakersfield sound notwithstanding. Yeah, I did mention when I was talking about this earlier that country music does have a strong presence and cultural history in California. But again, it's not really something that was part of the Chicano experience, at least not for me and like the neighborhood I grew up in. But yeah, it was just so interesting the way they melded so many different genres. And some of the time that fusion worked to really great effect. And sometimes it didn't quite click for me. But I will say, in terms of my favorite songs on this album, I'm going to go with, as runners-up to favorite, I think y'all know which one my favorite is. I was pretty clear and it didn't change. But in terms of the runners-up for my favorite, I'm going to say Short Side of Nothing and Wake Up Dolores. Both of those songs had this really propulsive, almost rollicking energy to them. They just really moved. And they had like sort of a victorious quality to them, but also bittersweet quality. I think this whole album did that really well. You know, of having like a positive outlook, but also there being some melancholy to it. I think that's a very Chicano thing, you know. I think there's like a reason why you look at, you know, especially like in the LA area, that, you know, the Smiths and Morrissey, you know, like this music that's this very like kind of like depressing music, honestly, is very popular with the Chicano, or at least a subculture or a part of the Chicano subculture. You know, people of Mexican descent, I think we're looked at culturally as being like a very like upbeat, you know, celebratory type of people. But honestly, there's definitely like some melancholy and some like underlying sadness in the Mexican and then the Chicano experience. I mean, like just the fact that like Dia de los Muertos is like one of the big things we do, you know, and like death, you know, there's just this kind of like embracing of the fact that death is always just nearby. And like, yeah, so this album captures that feeling for me of like, even in celebration, even in victory, there's always just a little bit of melancholy. You know, there's always something to mourn. You know, there's always something to regret. You know, so that was really effective for me. But yeah, like I said, and this goes straight into that, which my favorite song was Kiko and the Lavender Moon. That song was just smooth. It was just had, you know, it was a confident song, but again, it just had this like melancholy to it. But what I liked about it is that it also had like this kind of seedy dive bar neo-noir type of quality to it, you know. It felt very cinematic. I could see that song being in a movie really effectively. But yeah, that's the song, my takeaway. Like if I'm only gonna listen to one song from this album, or just when I think about this album or talk about this album, that's gonna be the song that immediately comes to mind. Yeah, I look forward to listening to that one again. But yeah, that song is a classic. That feels like an all-timer. I'm wondering if that's the song. Like, you know, what songs do people talk about off this album? You know, it's their best-selling album, so for sure people have to have some opinions in terms of what their favorite songs are on this album. I'm wondering how much in line I am with kind of the general consensus. I'd be interested to know. But yeah, I think that's where I'll go ahead and leave on that high note that is Kiko and the Lavender Moon. Man, I look forward to listening to that again. But yeah, so if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to follow along with more of my reactions, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Signing out for today, this has been Movies and Music with AJ. My name's AJ. Thanks for watching and have a good day.